Greetings, this is Jim Lindsay. This is day 2 of topic 6, the question, are medical tools to enhance human beings morally troubling? So this is the second day. Hopefully you've completed the first day's lesson as well. Let's get started. So I wanted to show you where I'm going to be pulling some information from. If you've watched the first one, you're already familiar with this. You'll notice there are some topic 6 files down here at the bottom of the topic 6 page on the submit assignments page of Blackboard. So this my notes for topic 6, it's a Word document. You want that because in it are a bunch of links which I'll be pointing you to, which will help you as you go through and process this information. You can also get the PowerPoint slides if you like, but for sure you want the Word document. So now I'm going to skip over to my PowerPoint presentation, and then from there I'll be jumping over to the Word document and then other resources available through links. This is the PowerPoint presentation. The format of it will look familiar. And what we're doing here is actually, hold on one sec. I think instead what I'll do is I'll just remind you what we're doing. In the first day's portion of this instruction, we started to look at mechanical and electrical means which people could use to enhance themselves, enhance their human body. And we looked at not only enhancement items, but we also looked at therapeutic uses of mechanical and electrical technologies to do those things. And so we're going to do the same thing with pharmacological, surgical, and genetic. This one will actually probably be shorter, and hopefully you're enjoying this stuff. But we're going to be looking first at pharmacological, which medicine is what that's referring to. And so looking at drugs, medicines used to make a human body, and just again to remind you, we're not talking about healing somebody with this issue. When we're talking about using medical technology, we're not trying to make somebody well that's been injured or born with some sort of disease. We're talking about taking somebody that's healthy and raising them to some superhuman performance level for whatever their intent is with that. But we're going to next start with the pharmacological technologies which might be used to do such a thing. And of course with this one I'm also going to start with three therapeutic uses of pharmacological technology, which I think is important, because without those we wouldn't be at the point where we can start to then take stuff and just start enhancing ourselves. But and also it's kind of cool. So let me start over there. I'll see you in just a second. Okay, so I wanted to introduce you to 3 different medicines or pharmacological technologies which have been sort of foundational or bedrock technologies in making people as well as they are today. And so where I got this information is from the WebMD website, which I know is, you're not supposed to go over there and diagnose yourself, but I'm not a medical doctor, and I thought as I was doing research, what are some of the most important medicines that have been created. This one kind of jumped out at me. It was really easy to read, and the list was constructed by physicians and people in that that work in that area. So these first 3 things these medicines I want to show you are the result of that WebMD compilation. That is the web page right there, the webmd.com, and then you can 10 most important drugs. As you work your way over here, you'll see that as so that's where this article came from. And if you check out this link, basically you'll see that a number of different medical providers were questioned about this topic. So what did they come up with? What was decided as the most 3 important medicines in our history? Okay, the first one is penicillin, and the guy that you're looking at in the picture is not Hannibal Lecter, although he looks like Hannibal Lecter. That is Alexander Fleming, and he's the guy credited with coming up with penicillin. And what I think is kind of cool, as you read that article, it talks about all of the people that they asked to construct a list, because they came up with different answers for several things, but the number 1 on everybody's list was this guy and this medicine, penicillin. And as you read through it, one of the quotes in it is that 75% of the people who are now alive would not be alive because their parents or grandparents would have succumbed to infections from some sort of ailments without penicillin. So this guy's discovery and then research and everything he did with that medicine has been really important for all of us. Again, 75% of us wouldn't be here without this medicine. So that's the first. The second one is a pair of doctors, and if you have diabetes, maybe you know who these people are. Otherwise, you may not be familiar with them, but these guys are responsible. They're Canadian researchers. It's Frederick Grant Banting and Charles Best. And at the point when they did this, Charles Best was actually a graduate student. They came up with the first successful treatment with insulin extracted from an animal. And you can see it's a dog. So again, as if you're a dog person, hey, go dogs. They extracted insulin from a dog. They were able to get that into a form that they could then administer to a person with diabetes, and it was able to treat their condition, and then people with diabetes were able to live much longer and happier lives, with this insulin. And it's evolved since then. I think that they get insulin from other sources as well as they can make synthetic insulin now. But these two guys, again, Banting and Best, are credited with the that innovation with insulin. All right, and our third pair of people I wanted to present to you are actually credited with creating vaccines. And as you read the article, though, they point out that vaccines are not drugs. Again, I'm not a doctor, and so if you were to tell me vaccine's not a drug, I'm like, okay, whatever. But it's a way to treat people for something so that they don't get sick. And who you're looking at is pictures of Edward Jenner and Jonas Salk. They're credited with coming up with the vaccines for smallpox and polio. And because of their vaccines, they were able to basically eradicate the presence of smallpox, almost eradicate the presence of polio. And again, that's greatly that has greatly helped mankind, and we're thriving much more so than when those diseases were rampant. And perhaps now this is very timely. Hopefully we can get somebody credited in 2020 with a vaccine for COVID-19. And these are pharmacological therapeutic treatments used to basically just get people well, or get people to, in the case of the vaccine, so they don't get sick in the first place. What we're looking for in the remainder of this discussion about pharmacological technologies is how might those be used to take somebody from healthy human standards to even superhuman or even healthier than a regular person. And so the first one I have for you is really just a question, and it's more than anything to try and shock you and try and get some discussion going. But what I would ask you is, I would show you the picture of these people right here, and obviously these people are engaged in some recreational drug usage. And my question would be, sometimes people say that drug usage leads to an altered state, an altered mind. And I wouldn't spend much time on this in class, but basically, is that enhancing a person to some degree? And I would try and get your feedback on that. And again, just trying to kind of shock you and get you on task as we go forward. People use drugs a lot, as you can see. Let me skip over to a figure for you. I'm in the notes for this, the Word document that I told you about, and I'm going to get the space between the pages to go ahead and disappear. But where we're starting with this medical stuff is down here about at the bottom of page 5, and we've already covered all of that, so we're down to almost the bottom of page 6. And there's a link here to a drugabuse.gov web page, and if you look at that website, as you come over here to that figure, it talks about the amount of drug overdose deaths from 99 to 2018 from opioids. And you'll see that, that has steadily climbed. And so people are certainly continuing to use drugs recreationally and illegally. And as a result of that, people are actually dying. But, one of the things, especially about psychedelic kind of drugs, people would talk about, when I was a kid, they would say that, it opens your mind and that the psychedelic kind of stuff. And I've done a lot of dumb things in my life, but I've never taken drugs. That's one of the few things I can say I haven't done that's stupid. But that's one of the things I try to kind and prompt you guys with as we're working on this. And so that's one of the things that kind of prods you and maybe gets you thinking. So is a drug like that opening the mind, making you think of things creatively perhaps that you wouldn't have? Is that enhancement? And I would get your thoughts. So let me keep moving. So as we progress here, and there's that figure about the drug overdose deaths. I show you some pictures of various different medicines. Again, and I would ask questions, because there are drugs, which basically medicines you can take to help you feel less anxious, that potentially can help you remember things better, things to help you forget things. If you're, let's say you have bad memories of certain stuff and you're trying to suppress certain really bad memories. Drugs to help a person be interested in sexual activity or to perform sexually, or drugs that supplement therapy, if you're getting care from, like a psychiatrist, for example. And so these are things which I would ask you guys to think about. I know people talk about using Adderall or to concentrate more for classes, and I think all that stuff's probably really dangerous. I hope you don't do that. But that, is part of this discussion. If there was medicine that you could take that had like no side effects and that made you concentrate better or make you remember things longer or not have to sleep, that sort of stuff, would you take it and why? And so those are the things that we're investigating with this topic. In addition to these, and this next thing the next and the last thing, which has to do with the pharmacological topic, usually gets a lot of discussion, and that's basically this right here. Now, try to introduce you to some people or get you to tell me who these people are. Show you this guy, and maybe you recognize this guy's name. This guy's name is Mark McGuire. This lady right here, this is Maria Sharapova. And this guy right here, of course, this is Lance Armstrong. And I ask, what's the common theme here as you look at these three different individuals? And the answer, of course, is these are professional athletes which have all been basically tested and found positive for using performance-enhancing drugs, using steroids of some sort or some sort of performance-enhancing drug. And then as a result of that, were punished. Mark McGuire obviously was a Major League Baseball player with the Cardinals. Maria Sharapova was a professional tennis player. She just recently retired. Not as a result of this. This was the case with her was back in 2016 when she tested positive. And Lance Armstrong, a cyclist with the American cycling team, but he won the Tour de France multiple times. I'm sure you know who these guys are. These guys and girls are. So my question would be, as you think about professional athletes, are you okay with them taking performance-enhancing drugs? Are you okay with people, using those? Why? Why not? And would you still be interested in athletics? Let's say it was opened up. They opened up the door. They said, you know what? You can do whatever you want. You can take whatever performance-enhancing drugs you want. What would your thoughts be on that? Why? And so there's a documentary that's available on Netflix. If you have Netflix, I encourage you to check this out. You're probably watching a lot of Netflix anyway. But this Ikaros documentary It's really good. And in it, basically, the journalist the guy that created the documentary is interested in cycling. He's a cyclist, and so he's interested in Lance Armstrong. And he starts to talk to people about the doping process and things maybe that where he started thinking about because of everything what happened with Lance Armstrong. And then it goes from there to like the entire athletic field, and he starts working with a guy from Russia that ran the basically the doping program for the Russian Olympic athletes, and it's a really interesting movie. And so if you get a chance, and I've got a link to that in the notes. I'll jump over there to show you the link. Okay, so in the notes for this this issue, as you come down here to the this is the top, I believe, of page. This is the top of page 7 right here. There's this Netflix.com title, and there's the title number right there. If you look at that in a browser, it's this movie right here. But I think you'll really find that interesting. If you're into sports at all, watching that it's just wow. I mean, it's crazy everything that the different steps that they went through, and like in some of the Olympics where this guy was that he works with through this documentary, some of the steps that the Russians went through. Now, I'm sure it's not just the Russians. I mean, I'm sure it's other countries, but the steps that they went through to get it to where they could substitute one person's urine for another person's urine, or one person's blood for another person's blood to make sure that it tested clean. It's very interesting. So those are questions, and what I would to close that out, what I would then do is basically have you guys try and discuss this in class for a while. Would you still be interested in the NFL if it was no holds barred, do whatever you want, or the MLB, or tennis, or cycling, or NASCAR, or whatever? Would you still be interested in public sports, and why or why not? And so, since I can't have this discussion with you in class, that's part of your issue analysis for this topic. And if you look over at the issue analysis, the last question, question 6, looks like this. So this is the issue analysis. If you come down to the last one, you'll see that there's a question asking you those things. And that's why I like to hear from you. And it's what's kind of cool too is to hear a lot of the times there are athletes in class and their experience with their trainers and with the NCAA and all the different requirements. Because if you've never talked to one of somebody that has to that's done that sort of level of training, it's really interesting. And the amount of things that because you're constantly pushed to be as good as you can possibly be, but you have to be very careful to make sure that you don't do anything that is okay right now, but then turns into not okay. Can you take this particular supplement and still be all right or not? And all those sorts of questions. And so I look forward to your feedback. Again, this is question 6 on the issue analysis, but I look forward to reading what you guys think about that particular topic. Okay, so I'm back in the PowerPoint presentation, and this next, the second to last thing I ask you to consider is surgical means which people can use to potentially enhance themselves, to make themselves super strong or whatever. And so I have a couple things I want to show you, web pages I want to show you, but this picture, what you're looking at right there is a kidney. That is a 3D printed kidney, and what that's coming from is a video. And I want to jump over to the notes, but just like I've done with the others, I want to show you a couple therapeutic uses of surgery. It's when it's an invasive procedure where you're either cutting somebody open or using some sort of laparoscopy sort of technology to do something inside of someone's body, right? And so with this first little bit, I want to show you a couple of therapeutic uses of surgery, but this one is just, if you've taken CIS 141 with me before, this might look familiar. Let me jump over to my notes and show you where this came from. Okay, this comes from the top of page 7 in the notes. There's a surgical portion, and I have therapeutic things up here. It talks about 3D printed organs and a 2020 update to that story. As you look at these top 2 links right here, and what those look like in a browser are the following. You have this 16:9 story. This is from back in 2013. It was a really cool story, and in it, what you're seeing in that PowerPoint slide with the picture of the 3D printed kidney, there's a guy named Dr. Atala, which basically works at the Wake Forest Medical School, and he's a organ replacement expert, and he had this idea for 3D printing and using 3D printers. And if you've never seen a 3D printer before, I know we've discussed them in class a little bit, but it's where you take a device which basically extrudes something. It basically outputs in beads, like little plastic beads or metal beads or food beads or whatever. In this case, it's called bio ink, and in this process, the 3D printer basically builds organs, and then those organs, they're working at Wake Forest on getting these organs to where you can actually, if you need a kidney, you print a kidney. If you need a heart, you print a heart. If you need an ear, you print an ear. And the stuff that they print this out of, it includes cells from the recipient that's going to get it. And as a result of that, the body doesn't want to reject it like it normally would if it came from somebody else. It's really, really, really cool technology. One of the things I love about this is when somebody in some other field besides technology looks at a new piece of technology and goes, wow, I can use that like this. I mean, to me, that just blows my mind, because he's already, this Dr. Atala is already a really good doctor. But on top of that, he has the wherewithal to basically look at something that has to do with printing and then incorporating that into his field. And that's what I hope you guys will do as a result of your education, because you're going to go into all sorts of different fields. How can you use these different technologies to then better yourself and your field and make yourself stand out? That's going to be really cool to watch. And so as you look at those different stories, there's the initial one. And all I'd ask you to watch on that is from about 45 seconds into about 3 minutes. Again, from 45 seconds into about 3 minutes on that story. You can watch the whole thing. The whole thing is really cool. But from there, if you jump over to this other link, and that's the second link you see right there, it's a 2020 update of that process, and you can see it's from February 11th. And so a different, you can see HBO for their Vice program basically was back at Wake Forest, and they're back, and it shows you additional stuff that they've done since 2013 and how it has progressed. And so this is using technology to basically create stuff that's going to allow somebody to get well. And so if they need a heart, they need a kidney, they need a lung, they need an ear or a nose, you can potentially get to the point where we can print these things and then incorporate those into a person. Now on top of that, let's say we wanted to just do this for enhancement. Let's say you wanted bigger biceps. Well, if you can 3D print a heart, then you can probably 3D print a bicep. Or you wanted to have really big traps, or you wanted to have a really flat stomach. Can you print those sorts of muscles and then put those on onto a person? And so that's the kind of thing that so this is therapeutic. What you're seeing, the use of it now, it's therapeutic, but I can see this to where once they perfect it, it also becoming something that will be used just for enhancement as well. Now, in addition to this, people use surgery to enhance themselves like crazy. This is a very common thing. It's a really easy one for us to talk about, and we can do it very quickly. Let me change slides here. So, okay, before I change the slides, if you want to jump on over there and watch that 16:9 clip, again, 45 seconds to about 3 minutes, and then some of the update in the 2021, and I'll see you in a minute. So I'm going to pause here, and I'll see you in a minute. Okay, hopefully you enjoyed that. The next thing I wanted to show you with regard to surgery, and this is all enhancement at this point, there are lots of different things people use surgery for to make themselves just look better. And as you look at the notes, I went to a kind of fashion website and got some figures about from 2017, what were the top plastic surgery trends, and those included things like breast augmentation, breast lifts, rhinoplasty, which is nose jobs, tummy tucks, liposuction, and so on. And so there are various different means of using surgery to make people just look prettier in their eyes. And so this definitely is something that qualifies as a medical technology for enhancement. And it's definitely not new. So that's been around for quite some time. Wanted to make sure we pointed that one out. So my questions for you at that point would be like, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think do you have any problem with that? If somebody has the money and they have the desire to do such a thing, what are your thoughts? Because that's all relevant to this discussion about enhancement. That's exactly what we're talking about. So that's kind of a nice one to use in class, because everybody has heard of those sorts of things, and that's not science fiction. That's something that maybe someone has had such a procedure done. So very good. So we've talked about everything except our last category of medical technology, and that is genetic modification. And we want to look at ways in which genetics might be used to enhance people. So this is also a good one to get into, because the next topic that we discuss, topic 7, we're going to be looking at, is it, when we're going to be looking at whether scientists should be creating artificial living things or not. Genetic modification is a huge part of that. Again, so this is not only applicable to what we're talking about here for topic 6, but also for topic 7, which is going to be issue 13 in your book. So topic 6 and 7, people, speakers, be paying a lot of attention, especially because this is especially like right in your wheelhouse. All right, so let's discuss this a little bit. Gene modification, or trying to breed things selectively, that's been around forever. Think back when you were back in high school and you're learning about when like Punnett squares and was it Mendeleev, whatever the guy's name was, that was taking different strains of beans and trying to cross those in such a way that the desired traits came out with the the next generation of beans or whatever he was growing. People have been doing selective breeding with animals forever. We have the entire horse industry in the state of Kentucky, which we're trying to breed really fast race horses, right? And so again, this is hundreds, thousands of years old, right? Looking at examples of beings which have very desirable traits, and then pairing those with other horses, other cows, other beings, and then coming up with hopefully offspring which have those desired traits. As far as genetic modification goes at the DNA level, that's been done for decades as well, but it was not. It's been pretty clumsy. And as you look at the links that I have in my notes, there's a Wall Street Journal article which talks about some history with this, and it talks about specifically, because it gets to something called CRISPR, and I'm going to show you CRISPR in just a minute. But prior to this CRISPR tool, which was not available until about 2012, researchers would take radiation and they would try and flip DNA letters. You remember like the adenine, guanine, thymine, cytosine pairs that make up DNA. When you look at a DNA double helix, right, the different components inside of that, they would try to use radiation and blast chunks of DNA and try and make it so that some of those pairs would flip, and it just was not precise. And so the ability to do genetic modification until just recently has been really very, very difficult. And then in 2012, at Harvard, there was Harvard and MIT basically came up with this thing called CRISPR, and it's, let me show you what that looks like. Okay, so I'm over in my notes, and as you look at my notes, this is from page 8, the bottom of page 8 in my notes. Here's a link to the Wall Street Journal article that I was alluding to a second ago. As we get to 2012, you can see like the Broad Institute at Harvard and MIT working together. They come up with this CRISPR technology, and in this document I have links to 2 different videos, and I hope you will watch both of these. Again, this is going to be helpful to you not only with this topic but also with our next topic, topic 7, which is issue 13 in the text. But both of these videos, I think, very concisely and also very well explain what the CRISPR technology is. So I'm going to jump over to my browser. This is what the first one looks like, this Business Insider webpage, and I got this link from a CIS 205 student named David Murdian, who's a really bright guy, and he was talking about this. He loves this. He was a very good speaker, and this topic was near and dear to him, and so he was speaking about this. And so this is one of the resources he came in with his presentation. I've stolen it and continued to use it since. So if you watch that video, you see it's only about 1.5 minutes long, but it very, I think, quickly and very concisely starts to talk about what CRISPR is. And if you jump over to that next link, which is this one right here from the Broad Institute at Harvard and MIT, Broad Institute is at Harvard, but these guys are the ones that developed CRISPR, and they're talking a little bit more about it. So once you have a general idea of what CRISPR is from that, you jump over here to this second video and you watch this, and this gentleman starts to talk about how it works. And so I think with these 2 videos you get a pretty cool picture about how CRISPR has made the work of a genetic scientist much easier. And as a result of that, they're using this sort of technology to work on therapeutic things, like working on things like cystic fibrosis, cancer. I mean, you name it. There are researchers out there working with this CRISPR sort of technology to look at ways in which damaged DNA can then be repaired to make it healthy again. And so again, that's therapeutic implementations of this CRISPR stuff. But on top of that, there's also a lot of speculation about how this sort of technology will be used to also be used for enhancement. For example, what color eyes do you want your kid to have? Do you want your kid to be able to run fast? Do you want to be able to run fast? Do you want to change the color of your eyes? That sort of stuff. And through CRISPR genetic engineering type of stuff, is that possible? When would that be possible? Are you okay with that? Why? Why not? And so that's the sort of things that we're asking with this issue. And again, when you watch this and you see how available it is, how much it's being used, I think what you'll have to come away from this and go, wow, that's a lot closer than I thought. In fact, let me show you this, because you also look over in the presentation. Hold on one second. Okay, so before I jump, I'll pause a minute. Again, watch this Business Insider video and watch that one from the Broad Institute. That's my request for you. So I'll take a break. Please go ahead and take a look at those, and I'll meet you back at the presentation in a minute. Okay, I hope you like that. I hope that you're excited about it. This is just some timeline stuff about the DNA or genetic engineering research and how it's gotten, and modification, how it's gotten better and better. There's that video I showed you a second ago. That is the video itself. I'm not going to play it because I don't want to run into copyright stuff. Hang on. Okay, I got past it. Again, I gotta make sure I don't play some copyrighted stuff and get booted off of YouTube. And this slide, just if you look at the notes of this slide, it starts talking about implementations of how CRISPR-9 has been used to, already been used to do things like take mushrooms and, in agriculture. The agriculture industry has basically genetically modified mushrooms so that when you handle them, they don't get bruises on them and look gross. And when they go to because when they go to the grocery store, if they have bruises on them and they look gross, people won't buy them. So they basically took out that little sequence of letters in the DNA that made them bruise, and they were still good to eat, but they just had the bruises on them. So they took out that little sequence of DNA, and then boom, there they are. They're over at the supermarkets now, and they're selling a lot better than they used to. And then important stuff like therapeutic uses where it's being used to work with cystic fibrosis, sickle cell disease, and so on. It just goes on and on. But what I wanted to show you is this right here. Let's say you wanted to try CRISPR. Well, guess what? You can go out and buy it. One of the websites that sells these things is theodin.com. Note that there's a dash in there. But if you wanted to get your own CRISPR kit, you just order it. And then it comes with instructions. And then right there at your house, you can be doing your own DNA work. And I have a link in the notes to a YouTube video where a person kind of walks you through a CRISPR experiment. So if you want, you've got time right now, right? If you want to go ahead and get some CRISPR, get yourself a CRISPR kit and just sort of have some fun modifying genes, here's your chance. And so this is something that's here. It's definitely going to be used for enhancement. There were a couple of Chinese doctors that recently, they genetically engineered a set of twins, and they've recently gone to prison for that. What they did, even all over the world, there was a big outcry of the way that they basically genetically engineered these kids to be born at the way they were. They have recently gone to jail within the last 3 months. These guys have been sent to prison. So it's something that's going to be used for enhancement. So I want you to know what it is. The next thing when we talk about genetic engineering is it talks about something called somatic versus germline cells, because as you start to work with these different types of cells, one type of cell is quite different than the other. And so I want to make sure you're aware of somatic versus germline modification. Now you'll find this information in your text as you read it, but the modifications made to somatic cells only make changes for that living being. So for example, if I went in and I had a bunch of changes made to my somatic cells that dictate what the color of my eyes are, that would only affect me. In contrast to that, if you work with germline cells, if you have modifications made to the germline cells, those impact the living being, but they also impact their offspring. So at that point, if I had kids, then any changes I'm making to my germline cells are going to also impact my offspring. So the question that arises is like, okay, you're an adult and you're choosing to make these changes to yourself, okay, but now you're making changes. If you start working at the germline with the germline cells, now you're making changes which are going to impact your offspring that have no say in whether you're doing something crazy or not. And so that's another whole level of debate. Is like now you're starting to really impact others, your own kids, based on these choices that you're making with your working with germline cells. And so that's a really interesting aspect of this topic. Okay, and to finish this up, I just would ask you to, the book asks you to basically, one of the chapter objectives is to, think about the slippery, what a slippery slope is. What does that mean? And, I've got a picture of the panda bears sliding down the slide there. It's a slippery slope and they're sliding down it, right? When you think about that from a ethics perspective, or you think about that from a technology perspective, what does that mean? That's one of the things I want you guys pondering as we go through this. Okay, so I'm going to jump back to the previous slide just because that's Those pandas are cute, but they're a little distracting. As you think about this topic, once you start in the enhancement process, whether it's mechanical or surgical or genetic or whatever, is that a slippery slope, and why? And those are one of the things. That's not one of the issue analysis questions, but it very well could have been. And so again, once we start down this road, is this something that we can then stop, and why? So those are the things I want you thinking about. So thank you very much for your time and your attention with this. I hope that you've learned something interesting. I hope that it has prompted you to think about these different topics you're reading about and hearing about. And I look forward to your thoughts in the issue analysis. And have a great day.